Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2020 Berkeley China Summit. I'm Coco Key. Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2020 Berkeley China Summit. I'm Coco Key, Berkeley House MBA alumnus and the board director of this summit. I'm your MC for today's section. This is the 5th year of Berkeley China Summit, often known as BCS. This year's theme is Redefine and Reconnect, Technology Empowering the World. One of the goals of the summit is to create a platform for Berkeley students, alumni, and friends with shared background and interest in China to come together once a year to reconnect and meet new friends in addition to learning new knowledge. I'm glad to let you know that the organization has been growing and transforming. Recently, it introduced a 2-layer structure. First layer being the organizing committee comprised of Berkeley students who operate the conference, and the other layer being an alumni board of directors who support and mentor students involved in the operation. The new structure allows us to continuously provide learning and growing opportunities for students, as well as mentoring opportunities for alumni. We encourage Berkeley students and alumni to get involved and support the summit in the future. Now, on behalf of the alumni board members, I want to thank the student organizers for their hard work in overcoming challenges posed by the pandemic to bring us BCS today. I also want to thank the board members for their contributions. It definitely took a lot of teamwork. The pandemic edition of the BCS this year has 2 sessions, today and tomorrow. Will feature 4 keynote speakers and 4 panels. Let me now introduce Michelle Zhang, co-president of this year's summit, to make welcome remarks and share some insider information of this year's summit. Michelle is a 2nd-year MBA student. She has done an excellent job leading the organizing committee and put.
Thank you, Coco. Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to welcome you on behalf of the Student Organizing Committee of Berkeley China Summit. 2020 is a black swan. When we planned for BCS this year, we never imagined that each of us will be sitting in front of a screen, thousands of miles apart. It has been a great challenge to all of us. But the unexpected hardship didn't stop us. Instead, it gave us an opportunity to reconsider those fundamental questions, such as who we are and what our purpose should be. Rising to the challenge, we're bringing you the redefined pandemic version of BCS, where audience, speakers, and staff members are reconnected by cutting-edge technology, hence our theme, Redefine and Reconnect, Technology Empowering the World. The online format breaks all the physical boundaries, takes in convenience and flexibility, and enables truly bilateral discussion and a bilateral audience. So as it turned out, those hardships were a real gift for BCS. Thank you all for making time to be here. I want to give special acknowledgement to our Student Organizing Committee for your hard work and excellent job, and to the Alumni Board for your support and mentorship. And finally, to this year of 2020, thank you for making us even stronger. I hope you all stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. thank you and your team for all the work you have put in for this put in the summit. Next, we are going to play a welcome remarks video from the Executive Director of the Cal Alumni Association, Ms. Chloe Hewlett. The Cal Alumni Association, or CAA, represents more than 500,000 Cal alumni all over the world.
On behalf of the Cal Alumni Association, greetings to all of the Berkeley
We want to thank Ms. Hewlett and CAA for their continued support. Go Bears! Now it's time for today's first keynote speaker, Dr. Zhang Wenhong. Dr. Zhang is professor and head of the Center for Infectious Disease at Huashan Hospital in Fudan University. Dubbed the gatekeeper of Shanghai, Dr. Zhang led a team of more than 60 medical experts in the fight against COVID-19. He shared information with the public in a no-nonsense, genuine, and sometimes humorous style, giving Chinese people desperately needed comfort and levity, and turned millions of Chinese into his fans. Following Dr. Zhang's speech will be a Q&A. Feel free to type your questions in your Baidu or YouTube live stream chat box. Without further delay, please join us to welcome Dr. Zhang. Welcome, Dr. Zhang.
Can you open the camera for me? Okay, now it's fine. Okay. It's my great pleasure to attend the Berkeley China Summit today. And I'm very happy to share some experience in China. And I want that our experience can help to collaborate with my colleagues in the world to end the pandemic quickly. So today my topic will be the how to fight the COVID-19, the challenges and the opportunity to end the epidemics. So firstly, I will share the current information about the epidemics of COVID-19 in the world. You can see that the confirmed cases globally today in the left graph, you will see that today it's almost in the peak, but maybe not at the the ending of the epidemic, and even we cannot see the trend for the decrease of the epidemic. If we see the first top 10 countries with the highest daily increase, we will see that most of the countries today stay in the South Asia and the continent of America. So we will see how to stop the epidemics and what is the end of this epidemic. Firstly, I will share the information about that, our own experience in Shanghai. We know that the Shanghai today we have almost 30 million people in this city. So firstly, we have lots of imported case from the epicenter of China from Wuhan. So here you will see that there's two waves of the epidemics. The first wave, we stopped the imported cases very quickly within 1 month, but today we stay in the second wave. However, the second wave today, all the imported cases stay in the closed circle. Now, no cases will go to the community. So therefore, there's no local transmission of the second wave. Therefore, today in China, almost 100% of our people, we go back to the normal life because all the imported cases today now stay in the closed circle and no cases will lead to the second round of the transmission. But if we cannot stop the imported case, what will happen? We can see what we will see that there will be a lot of local transmission and there will be an outbreak. However, today we will talk about how to end the pandemic. First of all, we will think about what happened in 2003. There's a SARS happened emerged in China also. However, lastly, in the whole world, all the SARS cases, the number is less than 10,000. So today, our first question is about how to end the emerging infectious disease outbreak in the world. We will think about the difference between SARS and the COVID-19 today. I think the only difference between SARS and the COVID-19 is that for SARS, there's no asymptomatic patients. Almost every patient will have the fever, cough, and pneumonia. So we can find the cases very easily without detection of the disease. Therefore, today, when we think about how to stop the COVID-19, we will say that if we in 2003, if the SARS is the similar to the COVID-19 today, I think the situation will be totally different. So today, the COVID-19, I think, so lots of asymptomatic is the main cause that we cannot stop the transmission today in the world. So if we compare, there's a lot of other international emergency. So we know that WHO, they announced that public health emergency or international concern after 2003, there's 6 times, including this time of the COVID-19. So there's a 2009, there's H1N1, and 2014, there's outbreak of polio virus, and 2014, the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, and 2015 outbreak of Zika in South America, and later there's an Ebola outbreak in Congo, and today we know that the outbreak of SARS-CoV-2, the COVID-19 today. We know that almost the public health emergency of international concern issue will not stop today, and all the infectious disease today still stay in the world. So we can say that the COVID-19 will not go away by itself if we do not take any strategies to stop the transmission. So meanwhile, we will compare with another outbreak in China. There's H7N9 in 2013. The outbreak in China, however, we stopped the infectious disease quickly because we found that the natural host, the reservoir of the virus is stay in the chicken, in the poultry. So when we close the poultry market, we stop the transmission of the disease. So it's very important for us to stop the transmission, find the origin of the disease, and meanwhile, we have quarantine all the cases that take the virus. So our strategy today, the COVID-19, there's a lot of circulation of the cases in the world. What kind of strategy we can take? So according to Chinese experience, we take different strategies for different regions. For Wuhan, so we know that this is an epidemic center of the disease in China. There's a lot of outbreak. So firstly, we stopped the transmission. We should lock down the city and stop the transmission from Wuhan to other city. Then in Wuhan city, we shut down the city and stop the transmission from the community to community, from family to family. And meanwhile, for Shanghai, what is the city I stay today with 30 million people here, we just slow down the city. We do not do anything to shut down or lock down. We just do the testing, expansion the testing, we do the tracing, we do social distancing, and we let every patient hospitalized. So if we do not stop the transmission, we will see that the local transmission, the community transmission of the disease will be very expensively. So this is one city of the Europe. We confirmed that the second wave, so after the imported cases, is very large. So it's very important for us is to stop the transmission of the disease and stop the outbreak of the disease in a city without a case. If we compare the Shanghai, the city with 30 million people with no cases firstly, and compare that with Wuhan, we can find that these two cities in Shanghai, lastly, we just have 374 local cases. And today we have almost half a year, we have no local cases anymore. But Wuhan city at the very early stage, we found that the city have 50,000 local cases. So I compare the cases of the COVID-19 within the two cities. I just want to say that the medical resource is very important for us to consider about what kind of the strategy we will take for fighting the COVID-19. If we see the medical resource in Wuhan at the first stage of the outbreak, we will find that within the city, they only have 2,000 beds to quarantine the patients. However, we know that there are almost 50,000 patients there. If we cannot provide the enough beds for quarantine people, we will see that there will be a big outbreak and the mortality will be very high. So at a very early stage of Wuhan, the mortality rate of the disease is almost 7%. So therefore, later we shut down the city and lock down the city. And meanwhile, we set up the Fangchang Shelter Hospital to provide enough beds for quarantine patients. So at the mid-March, almost 40,000 beds we can provide for quarantine the patients. So we two kinds of the strategies we take today in Wuhan and Shanghai just because the medical resource is very important. If medical resource is overwhelmed, the mortality will be very high. Today, we know that the mortality of the disease among the other cities out of Wuhan is almost less than 10% and almost near the 0.7 today. So Shanghai, we know that yes, our city with lots of people here, we do not lock down the city, we do not do shut down the city. However, meanwhile, we do maximizing testing for all the suspected cases and their house contacts. And meanwhile, we do maximizing tracing for every confirmed cases. And once we found the patients with COVID-19, we will hospitalize the people in our designated a designated hospital, and we can providing the maximizing hospitalizations. Our strategies is that the people not stay at home, but stay at the designated sites for quarantine. Because in China, you know that one family always maybe have several people in a narrow space. So therefore, maybe there's a lot of family transmission if we do not quarantine the patients in the designated local sites. So our strategy is to maximizing testing, maximizing tracing, maximizing hospitalizations. However, the city keep the normal life in our city, even at the very beginning of the epidemics of the COVID-19. Some people will think about how about we do not stop the economics, we do not stop the normal life in our city, we can take the herd immunity. However, according to our experience in Wuhan, we can find that even today, if we do the serological survey for the whole city, we found that the positive rate of antibody to COVID-19 is less than 3%. Even in the healthcare work in Wuhan, is almost less than 4%. In other cities, just like in Guangzhou and the other city, not so many patients there, all the people resident there, the positive rate is less than 2%. So therefore, if we do the herd immunity, we will find that there will be lots of people there, and the overwhelming of the patients in the city will lead to the high mortality of the city. I think it will be a disaster in a country with limited medical resource and with lots of people. So if we compare the mortality of the disease within the United States and the Mexico, this is two countries very near. We can find that the Mexico, in this graph is the blue for the mortality. We can find that almost the people died of the COVID-19 is younger than 65. We can see that in Mexico, almost 65 of the dead people is very young. However, in the United States, we can find that almost 75% of the dead people is older than 65. So therefore, if there's a overwhelming of medical resource, we will find that the mortality will be very high, and even in the young generation. So I think that if we in a country with limited medical resource, if we take the herd immunity, it will be really a disaster. So today in Mexico, we found that the mortality of the disease today is almost 10%, and in the United States now today is less than 3%. So I think the strategy is very clear. We should stop the transmission of the disease within a country with a lot of people. So today, every country will take the adapted strategy to decrease the mortality. According to the data from the United States, the CDC, we can find that the first wave in the United States, we can find that a lot of people died because at a very early stage. But today, even the higher elderly people, we can find that the mortality always decrease. So therefore, I think the adaptive strategy is very important for us today to take the social distancing, mask covers, and other strategy to stop the decreasing, to stop the transmission of the disease, and find more strategy to end the pandemic. Today, so this is epidemics data from the United States. We found that the epidemics was not at the end of the disease, and not even at the beginning of the end. So the India, we found that it's still in the peak. And in Europe, here's the data from Spain, and almost very similar from the France. We can find that today it's the second wave of the disease. And so the current treatment options, this is a very important question for us. If we cannot stop the transmission, if we can find the therapeutics If we can find a good way to treat the patients, even we have the disease, we will not die, and we can cure the disease by our therapeutic strategies. If it still work or not, I will show some data. So today there are lots of vaccine and novel agents now today were in the research and maybe in the clinical trial. But how about the results of the very early announcement of the pharmaceuticals for the efficacy of the novel agents? We can find that there's a lot of antiviral study today for developing the new drugs to fight the disease. Since it's really a race of the speed and the quality. And what about the outcome today? We can find that remdesivir, of course, in the United States, we found that it can decrease the mortality, and meanwhile, it can make the recovery quicker. However, in China, we do the similar study. We found that the drug cannot decrease the mortality very significantly, and even it cannot inhibit the virus replication. And meanwhile, other drugs, just like hydroxychloroquine, ineffective. And WHO, meanwhile, announced that. And how about the COVID-19 plasma therapy? We know that the plasma therapy is the biggest limitation is that we cannot find so many COVID plasma therapy. Now, how about the neutralizing antibody? Actually, in China, myself also lead the study in here. But today we found there's an announcement of the neutral antibody, the clinical trial result. We found that only the very high dosage that can get the efficacy for the disease to decrease the virus replication. However, other two dosage cannot get any results. So it failed to beat placebo in terms of reducing viral load by day 11. So therefore, I can say that even the neutralizing antibody today, it's not a good choice. So meanwhile, of course, there's a corticosteroids. In China, we have the very early strategy. I published a paper in the world at the very early at the March. I think that it really works that the corticosteroid. However, it only works in the very narrow therapeutic window. It can stop the progression of the disease. It cannot eradicate the virus itself. It just helps the host to stay longer and not die of the very high inflammatory response. So today I will say that we can eradicate the virus. Of course, no, in the world. We should live with the virus. Of course, we have to live with the virus. In China, our strategy is just today keep the 0 cases in our country. But once there's an imported case, there is a local transmission in our community, just like in Beijing, in Yunnan and other city in China. Today we have several cases of imported cases which led the local transmission. Our strategy is to find the case very early stage, stop the transmission very quickly, and do the expensive detection. So strategy is very similar for what we take today in Shanghai. So this is Xinjiang and Dalian. We can find that every time there is imported case and there is a local transmission, we will stop the outbreak very early and within 1 month. So today in the world, of course, there's a pandemic still is in the world. How to control the epidemics within the healthcare capacity is very important. Our strategy today is to inhibit the transmission of the disease, take the social distancing, and the other strategy is just to keep our healthcare capacity that will not lead to the overwhelming and decrease the mortality. So the international strategy for COVID-19 today is just to take a set alarming value. If there's a very overwhelming of the ICU beds and the medical resource overwhelming, we will take more stringent to take the social distancing and take some every strategy we can take to decrease the rebounding. So today the European to take some similar international strategy to decrease the mortality. So now, lastly, I will just several words about the strategy for COVID-19, the vaccine. The vaccine, of course, according to the Iceland model, we found that the neutral body, the antibody for the disease can take a very long time, and even after 4 months and the 6 months of the disease, and after they take the vaccine in China, we have some clinical trial. We found that the neutral body of the antibody can stay in the host for a long time, longer than 6 months. So I think still today there's a lot of hope for us to take the vaccine to fight the disease. So Ireland's model today, we found that they do quarantine, some similar strategy like that in China. So today in Iceland, the cases almost near zero. So today, I think if you will take the very severe strategy to quarantine the imported case, I think we can, of course, we can do well. However, now today, lots of country, we have a lot of patients there. We have to take the adaptive strategy. And the hope, of course, is from the vaccine. Once the vaccine can cover some rate of the whole people, just like 30 people or 40 people, 40% of the whole population take the vaccine, I think we can decrease the mortality to less than 0.5%, just like the COVID-19 is very similar to the flu, the seasonal flu today. I think if once we have a vaccine, we can decrease the mortality of the disease, then I think we can reopen the city, we can reopen the world. So today, I think the global collaborations, the vaccines, and the is very, very important. Once mortality dropped to a low level, I think the globally we can go back to the normal life. We can reopen the communication within countries. Thank you for all. For the strategy today in the China and in the world, I think we have to run faster than the virus and live with the COVID-19. And I hope that we can go back to a normal life very early and have the communication with all the people from the whole world. Is my really, I think, is my hope to end the pandemic very early. And I hope the collaboration in the world. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zhang, for painting a comprehensive and global picture of how to fight against the virus, different strategies, and also options of treatment. I'm seeing some questions coming in from the audience. So it's a Q&A time. I'd like to start with the first question from the audience. So the first question is, will COVID-19 situation be gone within 1 year, which means whether COVID-19 virus will be gone and the life will be back to normal within 1 year?
Okay, it's a good question. I think if we do not have effective vaccine, the COVID-19 epidemics will not end within 1 year. Because today we can see that even in the world, the pandemic, the trend is still in the very high level. In some region in the world is still in the peak. But even in the United States, we find that today there's some small rebound of the second wave. And in the Europe, now today is a lot of rebound in some countries, just like France and Spain. So therefore, if we do not have any strategy to stop the transmission, we do not have the effective vaccine, I can say that the ending of the pandemic cannot be happen within 1 year. But how about the vaccine? The first outcome of the clinical trial, the phase 3 trial, will be coming soon at the end of this year. Maybe at the end of the October or even at the early of November, the results from China, from Europe, from the United States will be coming. And if it works, I think we'll still stay for the distribution of the vaccine and more people. I think at least 30% of the whole population, or all the vulnerable people can take the vaccine, then we can decrease the mortality. I think we still need more time, just at least 1 year, to distribute the vaccine. Then we can decrease the mortality. But if the vaccine cannot be work, I think the time will be longer, maybe 2 years or 3 years. So today, I think we will wait for the efficacy of the vaccine in the world. It's very important at the end of this year. The vaccine works, it will be better. If not, I think we can still will have to wait for the new hope for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I see another question related to vaccine. The question is how to measure vaccines safety and effectiveness.
Okay, now for the efficacy and safety for the vaccine, I think it's very important for us to wait for the results from the phase 3 study. So the phase 3 study will tell us some data for the safety. We know that in some phase 3 study, like the mRNA clinical trial in the world, we found that there's some adverse events, and they stopped the phase 3 study a very short duration. So we wait for the last results of the phase 3. But however, we have another data for the safety from the emergency vaccination. So in China, we almost take the emergency vaccination for the lots of people, but we will take some data from the real world. We will find that. However, the safety, I think the data not only from phase 3, but also we will get the data from the real world vaccination after the launch of the vaccine. I think in the world, about the safety of the vaccine, we will have some strategy to monitor the safety. So therefore, I think today it's very important for us to get the results of phase 3. Meanwhile, the effectiveness, the efficacy of the vaccine, I think today even we can take some very early results from phase 3 or phase 2 clinical trial. We can find that the neutralizing antibody level, it is very steadily keeping at a very high level. However, if we will find the efficacy of the vaccine, we need to wait for the protective rate of the vaccine. I think at the end of the October or the very early time of the November, we can find that the protective rate of the some vaccine now today in the clinical trial. So the protective rate of the vaccine is the only golden standard for us to evaluate the efficacy of the vaccine. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have time just for the last question. One audience asked about the traditional Chinese medicine being prescribed to many COVID patients. Any studies on the effectiveness of those TCM? Does the TCM boost the immune system of patient or an individual?
Yes. In China, we have done a lot of clinical trial to evaluate the efficacy of TCM. We know that in China, this country, we have a long history, and the TCM also we have a long history. We know that in other countries, every country have their own traditional medicine, just like in Mongolia and in the country in the South America, and we can find that there's a lot of therapeutics with their own traditional treatment. We can say that it's a complementary treatment in the Western medicine. But today in China, in our patients, we almost take the one side, we take the Western medicine to treat the patient. The other side, we will take the TCM together. So I think today in China, the mortality rate, of course, it's very low. We today in the city, other than Wuhan, in Shanghai today, we almost treat 1,000 people here. Today, the mortality rate at a very low level. And now in imported case in Shanghai, recently I treated almost 600 patients and no patient died. Of course, I think all the results of our treatment today in China, it's not only one strategy. I think we combined the TCM, the Western medicine, and every strategy we can take to treat the patients. The most important today, I will say that how to avoid the overwhelming of the medical resource is the most important. Of course, the combination of the Western medicine and the complementary the TCM and the other strategy also it can work. Today we just say that we will see the results, we will see the outcomes of all the treatment. But of course, the core of the treatment is that how to stop the overwhelming of the disease is the most important. If we can stop the overwhelming of the disease, just like today in the United States, we can find that the mortality is decreasing very fastly. And of course, the treatment is meanwhile can help to decrease the mortality of the disease, including the TCM. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Zhang, for your presentation and the Q&A. For those who want to have a separate conversation with Dr. Zhang, we set up a networking section in the designated Zoom room. Please follow the your audience notebook instructions, audience handbook instructions to sign up and enter the Zoom room and communicate and have a further conversation with Dr. Zhang. Thank you so much, Dr. Zhang.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now to introduce our next keynote speaker is the chairwoman of 2020 Berkeley China Summit Board of Directors, Anne Su. Anne is an alumnus of both the College of Engineering and the High School of Business at UC Berkeley. She organized many alumni activities while living in China for 10 years, helped launch BCS 5 years ago, and is currently on the board of Cal Alumni Association Chinese chapter. For 2020 Berkeley China Summit, Anne put in tremendous time and effort to guide and support the organizing committee. And the screen is yours.
Thank you, Coco. Everyone all put in a lot of work, including yourself. Now, Dawn Tilbury and I met as graduate students in Berkeley's Electrical Engineering and Computer Science department in the late 1980s. We became fast friends and roommates and backpacked around China for 9 weeks in the summer of '92, sitting on some very hard seats in long train rides across China. Since then, Dawn has visited many more places around the world, taking advantage of conferences and sabbaticals as a professor of both mechanical and electrical engineering at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. She has even taught at Shanghai Jiaotong University. Dawn is an avid reader and literally does homework on each place she visits, giving her wide knowledge and understanding about many people and cultures around the world. With Dawn's intelligence, fun-loving and easygoing personality, and her ability to lead or be a team player as needed, it is no wonder that she has not only excelled at her field of engineering research, but also at administration, both at University of Michigan as Associate Dean of Research for UM's College of Engineering, and now at the National Science Foundation as head of its engineering directorate. She exemplifies the type of women leaders that Berkeley has educated in the past 150 years. Don's mission at the NSF is to support engineering research and education critical to the nation's future and to foster innovation to benefit society. She provides significant funding for basic research in engineering at academic institutions like UC Berkeley. Basic research involves projects that have no immediate application in industry or seemingly useless. Yet it is this type of research that furthers humanity's understanding of science and the universe. And when basic research results are turned into products and brought to market, we know them as technology innovation. At a time of decreasing international cooperation, especially between the US and China, I am personally grateful that a level-headed and extremely competent citizen of the world is in charge at an important post in our government. Please help me welcome Dr. Dawn Tilbury to speak to us on advancing basic research through international collaborations. Dawn?
Oh, thank you very much, Anne, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you for the invitation to be here today. As Anne mentioned, I'm the Assistant Director for Engineering at the National Science Foundation, and I'm happy to participate in the Berkeley China Summit. Let me see if I can get my PowerPoint presentation up here, because I have a few slides that I think will help me convey what I have to show today. If I can get that up. So as Anne mentioned, we met as graduate students at UC Berkeley in 1989, as I recall, right before the last big earthquake. Is it time for the next one? I hope not. So, and as she mentioned, while I was a graduate student, I spent a summer traveling around China with her. I graduated from Berkeley in '94 with my PhD and then started as a professor at the University of Michigan. In 2004, I went to Shanghai Jiaotong University for the University of Michigan Joint Institute and spent several weeks there teaching a course in mechanical engineering. My most recent trip to China was in 2017 for the IEEE Conference in Automation Science and Engineering that took place in Xi'an. So I'll tell you a little bit today about basic research at National Science Foundation and international collaborations, and then I'll leave some time at the end for questions. So first, let me tell you a little bit about the National Science Foundation, since not all of you might be familiar with it. We fund basic research and education in all areas of science and engineering, from astronomy, unlocking the secrets of the universe, to zoology, studying how animals behave, and everything in between A and Z. We also fund the US Antarctic program with several year-round bases on the continent, and that was one of the places I did have an opportunity to visit, which was quite amazing, but that's another story. So our budget for fiscal year 19 was about $8 billion. We're just finishing up fiscal year 20. The fiscal year ends on September 30th. And you can see there's a lot of things that go into that budget. I'd like to point you to the number on the far left. 94% of the money that we get at NSF from taxpayers, US taxpayers, goes out the door to fund basic research and education and outreach activities in all 50 states and territories. We don't do research at NSF. We enable others to do that research and education. When people send in those proposals, you see more than 40,000 were received, we evaluate them using two criteria: intellectual merit, or how will this project generate new knowledge, and broader impacts. How will the results of the research impact society? This merit review process that we follow with these two criteria and expert panel reviews is considered the gold standard worldwide. You can also see that more than 300,000 people are funded, at least in part, by the National Science Foundation. Also, from the more than 40,000 proposals we receive, only about 18,000 are able to be funded. Now, many of those that we leave on the cutting room floor are meritorious and would benefit from funding, but there's just not enough money in the pot that we get from Congress to fund everything that would be fundable. or valuable to society. So it's a very difficult decision to choose. So what happens with all that research? I'll give you a few examples of some the investments that we've made and the outcomes. One thing that you might think of is 3D printing. Now, NSF started funding the very basics of 3D printing or additive manufacturing in the 1980s. And since then, it's grown into a multi-billion-dollar industry. Some of the work that we funded also has enabled autonomous cars, barcodes, and the foundation for the internet. You might have heard about gravitational waves. Well, NSF persisted in funding the instrument, the LIGO, or Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, for nearly 40 years before it detected its first gravitational wave. The telecommunications giant Qualcomm started with an NSF small business grant, and the internet giant Google grew out of an NSF project on digital libraries at Stanford. And just last year, an NSF-funded Event Horizon telescope took a picture of a black hole. Now, the Event Horizon telescope is a great example of international collaboration. By connecting 8 ground-based telescopes located all across the planet and 13 partner institutions around the world, the international team of more than 200 scientists from 20 different countries worked together to analyze the data that those telescopes took and piece together the first image of a black hole. That image that you see on this slide was seen by an estimated 1 billion people worldwide. Now, of course, most international partnerships are on a much smaller scale. So why does NSF care about international partnerships? Well, let's look at a map of the world and see where R&D or research and development investments are being made. North America is just over a quarter, which is less than Asia. And if you compare in the purple here to see how those investments have grown over time, you can see that Asia has been growing faster than other regions. Now, much of that growth is coming from China, and on my next slide, I'll have a little more detail. But with this large investment worldwide, it makes sense for countries to partner with each other on basic research, the fundamental knowledge that comes from exploring new directions and new phenomena that can lead to new breakthroughs, new industries, and help make life better for people all around the world. There will always be competition in the marketplace, but cooperation in the pre-competitive basic research space can benefit everyone. By publishing the findings of this basic research in the open literature, everyone can benefit from the findings of this basic research, and knowledge can grow further and faster than if everyone had to figure everything out all by themselves. So why is R&D spending important? Well, it's a driver of innovation. In this chart, you can see that in 2015, the US spent the most on R&D of any single country, accounting for about 26%, or almost $500 billion, of the estimated $2 trillion global total. Now, China was a decisive second at 21%. One thing to note that's not shown in this chart is that China spends about 5% of its total R&D funds on basic research and 85% on development, whereas the US spends a larger fraction, about 17%, on basic research and a smaller fraction on development. On the other hand, what is shown in this plot is that China has rapidly increased their R&D spending over time, an average of 18% per year since 2000, compared to 4% in the US. Indications show that we expect China to overtake the US spending in about 2018 or 19. The data for that is still being gathered, but that's the expectation. So what does international cooperation look like from the NSF perspective, since that's really what I can tell you most about? And there's really a lot of different ways for people to collaborate. The primary form of international collaboration is ad hoc, researcher to researcher, where two parties work together, maybe talk about new ideas at a conference, or exchange students, maybe share data, while they're working to solve a similar problem. There are also formal agreements between agencies, and I'll talk about one between the US and China a little bit later. The collaboration can be simple, with an individual faculty member writing a proposal to NSF and her international counterpart finding her own funding, and the two work together informally. Typically, with any international collaboration, the US funds the US side of the partnership, and the international partner is funded by their own government or other funding agency. But when the two faculty have to write two different proposals, it's not easy for both to be funded at the same time. And we sometimes call that double jeopardy, since the same proposal needs to be reviewed by two different review processes, two different panels, and maybe the timing is off. So at NSF, we try to spend time to work with other agencies and make these types of formal agreements so that the team can write one proposal that gets reviewed by one panel. And if it's successful, then the two sides each get their own funding from their own government. This is a great situation for the researchers because they don't have to go through this double jeopardy, and it saves them a lot of time and effort. Of course, it takes a lot of time and effort for us at NSF to create those types of partnerships, but we think it's beneficial for the researchers. And so we do have a lot of these types of international agreements with funding agencies in Germany, Israel, UK, China, and many others. A memorandum of understanding is another way for people to work together, either for a joint solicitation, such as that two-dimensional funding I talked about, or for large-scale facilities like the Event Horizon Telescope, or logistics in Antarctica, where multiple countries contribute flights and other support to researchers on the continent. Now at NSF, we're always looking for new ways to collaborate, to work together to advance the basic scientific research that can have multiple benefits to society. So what countries does NSF researchers collaborate with? Well, the answer is just about every country has somebody at NSF doing some sort of project in partnership with someone in the other country. This chart shows the top 20 partners, and you can see that China is number 5. Behind Germany, the UK, France, and Canada, but ahead of Italy, Spain, and Australia. Now, China and the US have a long history of engagement in science. In fact, President Jimmy Carter and Chinese President Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping signed the US-China Science and Technology Agreement just a few weeks after diplomatic relations were established in 1979. Research connections between the US and China are very strong. China is a very frequent partner with the US in research collaborations. In fact, in 2018, 25% of internationally co-authored publications with one author at a US university also had a co-author with a Chinese affiliation. So at NSF, the engineering directorate has a US-China partnership through the NSF and National Natural Science Foundation of China, or NSFC, this joint solicitation on environmental sustainability challenges. This joint solicitation has been running since 2014. Since the US and China have the 2 largest economies on Earth and also have important engineering, technology, business, and trade relationships with each other, both nations face significant environmental sustainability challenges. For example, in the food, energy, and water nexus, urban sustainability, global change, and manufacturing. Fundamental research is needed to provide the foundational knowledge to address these types of societal challenges. Since this joint solicitation was started in 2014, there have been 4 different topics explored: combustion related to sustainable energy, sustainable manufacturing, urban water sustainability, and the most recent one, which is currently under review, is innovations at the nexus of food, energy, and water systems. This initiative aims to significantly advance our understanding of the food, energy, and water system through quantitative and computational modeling and enable research that will lead to innovative human and technological solutions to critical systems problems. Through this annual opportunity, NSF and NSFC have jointly funded a total of 27 awards from 2014 to 2019. The 2020 competition is currently underway, and the awards will be made early in the next fiscal year. One example is at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, where a group is collaborating with a crop research group at Nanjing Agricultural University to study the US-China crop supply chain. Together, they're creating an integrated systems modeling framework that will enable the connection of local stakeholders to global challenges and opportunities. So several years ago, NSF had 3 international offices, and each office had one NSF employee and a small staff who tried to cover a huge breadth of research areas along with a large geographic area. We have since closed those international offices and pivoted towards more focused engagement in specific geographic regions using this multiplier program. Here we send teams of NSF employees on fact-finding missions to different countries or regions to evaluate collaboration opportunities in different countries that can lead to joint solicitations, memoranda of understanding, or other types of partnerships or collaborations. In one of the first multipliers expeditions, we sent a team to Germany to explore activities and opportunities in synthetic biology. Synthetic biology is an emerging field that focuses on the construction of new biological systems. It has the potential to enhance healthcare, agriculture, industry, and environmental biotechnology products. As a side note, a lot of the early advances in synthetic biology were led by an NSF-funded engineering research called SynBerk that was headquartered at UC Berkeley. The multipliers team that went to Germany participated in a workshop at the Max Planck Research Network, which is the largest national initiative in Europe in synthetic biology. So in summary, international collaborations are important for advancing basic research, and NSF is committed to facilitating our awardees to create and sustain these important research collaborations. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So thank you, Dr. Tilbury, for helping us understand the vital role that NSF play in global international collaboration and also in nurturing fundamental research. So I see some questions from the audience, and we have time for 1 or 2 questions. So the first question is, how does NSF stay independent and unbiased in today's crazy political environment?
So thank you for the question. NSF is an independent federal agency. So we are part of the executive branch. We report up through the president and the Office of Science and Technology Policy, but we are very independent. We issue our solicitations, and the decisions that we make are really coming from the community. We invite reviewers from the community, from academia, from industry to help evaluate the proposals. And then we make the decisions on what we think are the best research directions for the country as a whole. So we have in Congress very strong bipartisan support on the focus of science is important for the future of the country. So we have good support in Congress and from the presidential administration on the importance of basic research. I can't hear you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So the next question is, does NSF prioritize projects which advance interest? Or I think what they mean, this audience mean is, how does NSF prioritize and screen the projects and decide which project to take on?
So
do you take a more global view, or you have a preference for projects that provide more benefits to just human beings or mankind in general?
So we evaluate all projects that I mentioned before on two aspects. The first is the intellectual merit. What's the potential for the project to advance the frontiers of knowledge? And the second is the broader impact, which is what's the potential for the project to have an impact on society? And that impact can be many dimensions. It can be in education, it can be broadening participation, it can be developing new technologies. So many different ways for the research to have a potential impact on society. And so we treat both of those criteria very importantly. And we also look at a portfolio approach, that we don't want all the projects to be trying to solve the same problem or in the same way. We want to fund a diversity of approaches with a diversity of researchers and people located all across the country as well.
Thank you so much. So I have to wrap up the conversation since we're running out of time. The good news is those who want to continue the conversation with Dr. Tilbury can join a separate Zoom room. Please follow the handbook instructions and to sign up. So thank you, Dr. Tilbury.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. So next up is the senior care panel to be moderated by Carrie Graham. Professor Graham is adjunct professor at the USCF Institute for Health and Aging and holds a joint faculty appointment at UC Berkeley School of Public Health. The panelists from both the US and China will share the opportunities and challenges in senior care, either by doing section. Welcome the panel.
Hello, thank you so much for having us. And we're so honored today to be here to talk about senior care, both in the US and in China. Even before the pandemic hit, both the US and China were facing challenges with senior care and with our aging populations. Baby boomers in the US have officially entered retirement age, and China's only children's parents have also entered retirement age. And so we're here to talk today about what kind of life faces these two groups of seniors. Today, we have experts, and we would like to have a dialogue both among us and with you, the audience, on various aspects of senior care, covering health policy, NGOs, and business opportunities related to senior care. As I was introduced, my name is Carrie Graham, and I'm a professor at University of California. I've also been acting as a senior policy consultant to Governor Gavin Newsom's administration to help develop a master plan for aging in California with a goal to transform how we care for our aging population in California. I'm honored to be here today to moderate this panel, and now I'd like to introduce our other esteemed panelists. I'll start with Alan He. Alan's a senior partner at Syndat, and he's responsible for its business development, investment, and asset management activities. And Alan, I just want to open it up to you and let you introduce yourself for a minute or so.
Oh, hi, everyone. Thanks for the invitation, and will be appreciate the opportunity to speak as a panelist. Introducing myself and the company I'm working with. I'm a senior partner at Syndat Capital Management, which is a global-based, headquartered in Beijing, fund management platform. We specialize in real estate investment. Actually, 4 years ago, we started entered into this space with the mandate to we call learning with earnings. So the mandate is really to get into the space, seeking for the sizable cash flow driven real estate assets, and with the aim and also expectation of the growing demand in this sector. So far in senior living, we call senior living, or somebody call senior housing, we have deployed about 400 million US dollar equity, invested in US and UK in a couple of portfolios. So right now we actually own about over 100 senior care facilities in US and UK. Well, since we are based in China, we certainly have the mandate and the goal to cover on the global basis, including China. So in the last 2 years, we also started looking at opportunities in China, although it's still very early stage. So in the hope that we can bring our experience and knowledge and the business operational model from US, from Europe, trying to put our step foot in China, hopefully grow our business at home. And lastly, we also been recently working on some initiative to float our assets in the global market, which is in the progress. I stop here. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome, and we're so glad to have you. Next, I'm going to be introducing our panelist, Annie Chung. And Annie is the president and CEO of a really amazing community organization in California called Self-Help for the Elderly. It's a non-for-profit organization that provides a multitude of services. I'd also say that I really appreciate Annie because her organization has been a great partner to UC Berkeley in many research projects. So Annie, if you could just spend about 30 seconds introducing yourself. Oh, Annie, I think you're still on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry.
Yes.
Hi, everyone again. And thank you, Carrie, for the introductions. So I'm Annie Chung, and I'm the president and CEO of a community-based organization, as Carrie said, in the San Francisco Bay Area. We serve close to about 45,000 seniors a year. And we started in 1966. And later on, I'm going to go into our services, which is a pretty comprehensive elder care continuum. So I'll stop here because I know that we have some time limit, but I'll explain my services later. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Adam Tang. He's the Vice President of Tencent Healthcare. Adam, would you mind introducing yourself for just a minute?
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's my honor to join this event. This is Adam Tang from Q Health's Trusted Doctors. I'm the VP in charge of the operation and the business development. So currently, we are the largest integrated healthcare service provider, both online and offline in China. So for the online part, we have over 450,000 physicians. And for the offline part, we have over 130 medical institutions currently in China. So today is my honor to join this event. Personally, I have dedicated over a decade in healthcare investment in China, including the aging care. While in my past experience, I have led several investments, both in China, Australia, and including US, for the senior care, for the nursing care, etc. Including the case like the largest senior housing company in America called Brookdale. So it's my honor. I hope I can share some more experience and my personal opinion regarding the industry. Thank you.
Wonderful, Adam. Thank you. Now, we're just going to start with 3 questions and give each of you a chance to answer before we open it up to questions. And I just do want to say to the audience, please send us your questions. We want to hear your thoughts and any questions you have for the panelists. But let's just start talking about some of the challenges that are both the US and China are really facing. Both the populations of the US and China are getting older at a really rapid rate. And in the US, projections have shown that older adults in the US by the year 2050, about half won't be able to afford housing, even if they liquidate all their assets. So we have some major challenges in the US. We also have challenges that our Medicare program, it's our healthcare program for older adults, does not cover non-medical services that older people need, like transportation, meals, or personal assistance that's not medical. So there's a lot of challenges facing older adults in the US. And I want to start with Alan. Could you share some of the
Hello. I don't hear.
Alan? Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. I think, well, although countries have difference, but US and China have something important in common, the aging population. So Carrie mentioned this census by 2050. I have the data right in front of me that in terms of population, China today has almost or even more than 200 million people over age 65 right now. In US, US is also certainly catching up with the incoming baby boom generation, all arriving at the same age group. So by 2050, the US population, the same age group, will be almost 80 million. That's the latest number. So the challenge, if I can summarize, in US we see, as we've been in last 4 years, our experience, cost of care certainly is getting higher and higher. Cost of living, the real estate, is also getting more challenging, as Carrie mentioned. I mean, the early baby booming generation might still have a lot of equity, but along the time, people will be in less and less ownership of that size of equity. And thirdly is a shift of lifestyle for seniors. So today's seniors, I mean, if you compare with 20 years, they demand different lifestyle. Lastly, with the new medicine technology, seniors lives longer and longer. So that resulting in higher demand of healthcare. So these are the, I would say, 4 factors really challenging. So we might have opportunity to speak more in, hopefully in following questions. In China, talk a little bit in China, it's different. I think the good thing is China is still in the very early stage, although the demand is already massive. So I mean, this is our advantage. We hope with the experience from US, from Europe, we can really help China to establish a good footing in terms of how this industry will develop, will evolve. So right now, the biggest challenge in China, I see, number one, the whole ecosystem is still not existing at all. I mean, when we talk about senior care, senior living, it's not like just piece of a home. I mean, you need a high level government policy. You need the financial infrastructure from the government. So I mean, in US you have Medicare, Medicaid. In China, this is still under discussion. Certainly, the zoning, the land, the standards. Most importantly, the financial support. Not here right now. Here is just not existing at all. I mean, for example, I can share some experience. What we have in US, we are able to secure the HUD, the Freddie, the Fannie Mae. So those like a long-term 30 years financing to support this industry, low interest. I mean, it just doesn't exist in China. So I would say number one is the ecosystem is lacking. Number two is probably everybody knows. I mean, last 20 years, the massive growth of real estate put the land and the real estate very expensive. That created a huge hurdle for the seniors. Lastly, the culture and habit is a big issue at this moment, but this will getting better and better along the time. Hopefully, when the next generation, probably somebody 10 years elder than me, are much easier to be convinced to enjoy the institutional lifestyle of the senior living, as well as the new kind of new lifestyle, which is more feasible to their generation. Yeah, I think I stop here. Let's listen to others. Carrie?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, all. For some reason, I got kicked off the meeting, but let's move to Adam and have Adam. Can you answer the question?
Sure. Thanks, Gary. So I'm glad that Alan had mentioned a lot of challenges we are facing, both in like China and America. I think the same thing we are facing for the entire world is the aging population. Then we all know the demand for the need for the like senior housing, for the senior care is very huge. But here I want to say in China, what I was saying is though the demand is huge, but as Adam had mentioned, the system is not existed, and there's no like actual need for the business opportunity. It's very harsh. So what I really want to address here is when we have the demand for the market, like we have over 210 million population over 60 in China. But that doesn't mean we can successfully earn money or making business opportunities from there. Because for elderly care, well, in all the countries, I think it's a social well-being business. I've personally visited like over 30 countries for different system for the elderly care, which I think the one thing is the same. The payer, there always will be a final payer for all the healthcare service, and that will be always either the insurance or the government. So in China, I think the social insurance will be the final solution to everyone, but that is not enough. Like currently, we only have 60% of the population have covered by the old age pension fund. The other 40% is zero. There's nothing else. So how to care about this population is very difficult. And with the lack of the government and the insurance partner to join the industry to support the people for the payment, then there will be no funding for the industry to develop. That's a problem we are facing. And on the other hand, with the increasing human cost and very expensive land cost, it makes elderly care very hard, the elderly care business very difficult to move forward. And that is why, although I've invested in several elderly care projects in China, and what I see in the entire industry, I didn't see anybody making the proper profit and make break even is very difficult for almost all the players. I think people always think like the players, they making money is not social well-being or something. But in my mind, if the providers here in China, they cannot make money, then who will actually do the service for you? With no funding, with no support from the government, with no support from the insurance partners, then the industry is very difficult. So to develop to develop the opportunities here under such a circumstances, which I think we need to plan a long run. probably over at least 10 years, but plan long and do something for the future that will be more interesting and can be the actual plan for everybody. Yeah, thank you. Carrie, I think we've lost you.
Yeah, she's dropped.
Yeah,
maybe Annie,
you can directly. Yeah.
So I should just go.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Oh, maybe. Okay, so I'm Annie again. So hearing from our two speakers, I get really worried because, you know, like in the United States, when our population elderly over 65 is like 16%. But when we get to the number that Ellen mentioned, 200 million, you know, wow, we're really going to be in a crisis mode. So I think that there's a couple of interesting statistics about the baby boomers, whom I think that we all are. And for example, in the United States, there's around 73 million baby boomers, right, who are born between 1964 to 1946. And a couple of interesting stats that says that every day now, 10,000 baby boomers will be turning 65. That's an awesome number, you know, huge, huge number. And in another maybe 8-9 years, they said that by 2030, even the youngest boomer will turn 65. So I think that our senior population in the United States is really spiking, and that present really huge challenges, just like Ellen and just like what Adam said. So in San Francisco Bay Area, as I mentioned earlier, that our organization started in 1966. And I have to, you know, let you know that out of the 40 plus 45,000 seniors we serve in 5 Bay Area counties, 90% are low to moderate income seniors. And that means that their average income is probably anywhere between $500-600 to maybe $1,500, maybe $1,800 max. And they live on Social Security. 40% of our seniors have Social Security as their only source of income, which you know that is not going to last too long. So funding, you know, a lot of the senior services of what we call senior care or elder care, our challenge on the ground, you know, looking at all of the needs from this growing senior population, but yet both government sector as well as some private sector just are not keeping up with the pace of strengthening and expanding the infrastructure so that we could serve more seniors that are becoming aging. And also when Ellen said that our seniors are becoming living longer, right? Longevity, our average lifespan is definitely longer now. Then we're sensing that our infrastructure is going to not keep pace with the growing need of, let's say, seniors that have Alzheimer's and dementia, because statistics show that for elderly that are 85 plus, there's a 40% of Alzheimer's. That means almost 1 in 2 seniors could get dementia in their lifetime. And that alone is going to eat up a lot of our medical dollars as well as resources. I think that in the United States, we are lucky that we have Medicare, we have Social Security. And as I travel back to Hong Kong and China, that question always comes up. How do I fund long-term care, right? We have medical care, we have some home-based care, but how do you pay for when elderly start to have to live in nursing homes and skilled nursing, get rehab and other types of senior care that is very expensive. So again, on the ground, as Shelter for the Elderly is a pretty comprehensive elder care service. We provide affordable housing. We provide a licensed home care and hospice program. We provide residential care services for Alzheimer's seniors. But we also have a lot of services that are just based on what our seniors need. Out of the 45,000 seniors, we serve about 90% are Chinese seniors, and they come with different dialects, you know, and they come with different needs. But But our biggest challenge in the affordable housing is exactly what Adam already said and what Ellen already said. The cost of building housing is getting skyrocketing. So it almost, in the US, it's almost like $1,000 for every square foot, even affordable housing that we are building. So normally 30 years ago, when we build our senior housing, it's about 100,000 per unit, right? It's a small 1-bedroom or studio. But now, if I go and build senior housing now, it's gonna take many more millions of dollars. I forgot what was exactly. For a very small studio apartment, it's gonna be like maybe $1 million. You know, the costs have risen like 10 times. So now, even when my seniors apply for affordable housing that the city is trying to build, quite a few units, it's gonna take at least $2,000 income to be qualified to live in affordable housing. That's how bad the situation has become. And government, you know that US government is going broke. There's going to be less and less money to build affordable housing as well as providing healthcare. So I'm very concerned as a community-based organization that first, there's not enough resources to support the current infrastructure, and there's definitely going to be less and less resources in the future to expand our services to accommodate more seniors. So all these are very critical challenges that we face.
Very, very concerning. Thank you so much, Annie. Those are such important comments. So I want to make sure we give enough time for questions. So I want to go around with everybody and have you say, what is the one most important innovation? If you could wave your wand and have an innovation that address senior care today, what would that be? What would your top choice be for an innovation? Mine would be technology and bridging the digital divide, because I think the pandemic especially, and this 5-6 month long shelter in place has showed us the social isolation of seniors and them not having access to what Wi-Fi or broadband has been a real challenge in California. So that's what I'm going to say. Let's start with you, Annie. Wave your wand and tell us the one big innovation you would do today.
Definitely to help us bridge the digital divide. Really, Carrie, you nailed it on the head. During COVID, a lot of our seniors really need to be connected. We were providing them the meals because we delivered the meals to them. But so many need to call us every day to ask us how to do this, how to do that. And only about maybe 3% of our seniors got on Zoom and learned how to use it so that we could video conferencing. So if there's anything coming down, I needed people to help us bridge that digital divide.
Yeah. Alan, what would you say? What's your one big innovation you think would solve everything?
Yeah, just a piece of experience. We own those skilled nursing facilities in US. Well, I see a trend of integration between the healthcare system, hospitals, and the nursing homes. That actually create a lot of synergies, integration, and a shared service. And with that in mind, it also make easier to get into the technology, because traditionally nursing home are more behind in terms of technology. So if this is happening, what Annie mentioned, those technology, for example, telemedicine. You can visit the physician through the web conference, wearable device, all those mobile urgent care, that become more available, easier if this is happening.
Wonderful, thank you, so important. Adam, can I ask you to tell us what would be your one top innovation?
I think it's online and offline integration to leveraging the technology to generate a business like model for the industry, which is more important. Well, which I mean, currently our company can providing like online healthcare service. We for telemedicine, for delivering the medication to your home by fast pass delivery, which we can cover all the cities in China, and can deliver the medication from 2 days to 4 days, and some big places we can deliver the medication for within 30 minutes. And also we can providing all the medical care and the healthcare service from the offline each big cities currently in China. By this online and offline integration, we can on the maximum scale to decrease the cost for the services. Like the doctor, like the physicians, they are very expensive, but using the online way, we can, using the telemedicine, we can certainly save the cost and also help a lot of countryside to meet the actual expert physicians in the tier 1 or the tier 2 cities. And in the meantime, for the offline facilities, because we have the business from a traffic portal, we have the online consultation, telemedicine, which I can earn a lot of different traffic of the users, of the patients, of the aging people from different portal. And also we have the GP clinics, we have the medical centers collaborated with the government. All these become the traffic portal, though they didn't make break even or earn enough money, but that can earn a lot of enough traffics for us. And then we have the senior care, we have the specialist care, we have the day surgery centers. This can become our a profitable portal. So we just established a circle to taking care of the people's a lifetime different healthcare needs. From your birth to your end, that's what we are chasing for. And we earn the profit for different stages and for different products, and for the general care, primary care, all these, we just maybe break even, that's enough. But for the others, if you want to have some dental care from some eye clinic, or just you want to purchase some good glasses, then this can become our profitable business. Then we can make the entire circle running, because we can sometimes we make we lost some money there, but some other places we can earn the money back. Then we can take care of the entire people better, and we hope that's the business model we can establish. Yeah.
Great. And so we have just 1 minute before we're going to go to questions.
Okay.
So if there is a call to action, everybody gets 10 seconds to answer this. For the younger generations, for the students at UC Berkeley, for the younger populations in China, what would be your call to action for them? Let's start with Annie.
Harry, when I visited your class and Winston's class, I always end by suggesting all the students to come volunteer as self-help. Come volunteer on a regular basis, maybe, but come volunteer during special events like Thanksgiving. It will be really wonderful experience for all the students.
Thank you, Annie. Alan, what would be your call to action for the younger population?
Well, similar to Annie, there's strong demand for young people to be in the industry. So either you go join the senior care operators, get some training, or spend some time in the senior care centers. That's a starting point. Great.
Adam, what's your call to action?
I think as go to meet your parents more and find what they need and consider from there. Because if you really try to take care of your own parents, then you always will find the right thing to do for the industry, for the country.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you all. We have a lot of great questions here. So I'm going to start with this question about multi-generational living. Multi-generational living is a new concept where seniors age in the community with people at various life stages. what is your opinion about this new model of senior living, this intergenerational living? Anybody want to answer?
Maybe I go first.
Okay.
Actually, this model I was seeing in Netherlands. I've been there meeting Dr. Beckham, or so sorry, I forget the exact name. They just created the model like elderly people living there, but in the meantime, the younger generation, the different people are living in the same community, same building actually. So that makes the elderly people, they feel they still live into a normal community and feel they're connected with the society, not like the other traditional elderly care. The elderly population, they are isolated from each other. They can only meet the same age people, yes. Which really makes them feel very terrible feeling. By the academic research, especially the children and the elderly people, they can live together. They have the same needs, and in the meantime, the children can really help the elderly people escape from the dementia, from the other issues emotionally. So I think it's a good idea, but how to make it very safe, and the care needs, I mean the nursing care needs, the actual more intensive care needs can be satisfied. That's a challenge facing to most of the countries if you want to building this model. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
Annie, do you know of any intergenerational living senior housing? I think in the US, there are a few models, but maybe you know more than I.
Most of our subsidized housing, affordable housing, comes from federal funding, right? But they are so restrictive, Carrie, yes. That, for example, even if a couple that lived in a one-bedroom, right, and then one of the spouse passed away, almost within a few months, we have to relocate that resident into a studio. So the restriction really limits. I love it because our culture really stresses on family, taking care of each other, right? Extended family should always, if possible, live together, because you then give a lot of support, right? Babysitting, but as well as elder care. So I don't know, we have to go advocate. But Canada, Carrie, I heard that in Toronto, when they build a senior complex, then close by, they build some family housing. Then the family could live there. So I thought it's a model that we could look into.
Well, talking about Canada, actually, there is one already open in Vancouver.
Already open.
Yeah, they don't call multi-generation, they call generation living, something like that. It's just starting. In my opinion, it's interesting, but a lot of challenges in terms of standards, activities, food. So yeah. I mean, different needs. So we'll see. I mean, but it's good to have this kind of experiment to experience.
In California, they have made it easier for families in single family homes to build what's called an accessory dwelling unit in the backyard. Some people call those granny flat.
Yes.
And so they've made it very easy. There's not, it used to be more restricted, and you could build these tiny homes in the back of your house, either for you to bring a parent, or maybe when you retire, you move there and rent out your home. So that's the closest I've seen in California. Yeah. But let's move on to another question from the audience. One question is, China is heavily promoting automation in many areas of the economy. Will the automation shift be fast enough to catch the demographic shift to an aging population so that its economy can be sustained? What is the role of automation in senior care?
Automation. Sorry, I didn't
robots.
Catch.
Like robots.
Yeah, like robots.
Personally, I don't believe in currently the robot service for the elder care or even the entire healthcare service, which currently the quality and the service they can provide is very limited. in the long run, I believe the auto service can replacing most of the manpower, can save a lot of cost. That's in the long run. But for the next 10 years or even 15 years, I didn't see the service can be easily replaced. It's like human touch.
Yes.
Yeah, for China, I mean, the entire healthcare industry, for at least for the medical side, I didn't see big change for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So I think
we're trying so hard to fight social isolation. We're trying so hard to have human touch and human interaction for older adults, especially during the pandemic. The idea of using robots just does not seem to
It was scary.
solve that problem.
Yeah, that's correct.
So one question is, what is the more favorable locations for senior housing, urban or suburban?
Yeah, I may address that. That's an interesting question. It's changing. If you look at US, if you look at our facility we own, it's all in the suburban. But last 5 years, starting last 5 years, you will actually see high-end facilities open in Manhattan, Midtown. You also see those in Toronto, in Vancouver. It's all in the urban area. I think definitely it's changing because the new generation, even the young generation, tend to go back to the city. So this is also happening in for the seniors. In China, I mean, for the next 10, 15 years, I think it's all urban location. Those like suburban resort type care homes are actually, I'm sure it's going to fail. It's just for the resort, for tourism. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, because a lot of the times when we provide aging service, we have to think and include transportation, right? It's really important. Without transportation, a lot of the seniors would kind of like be imprisoned in their own homes, not able to go out, right, when they lose the mobility. So I think urban setting closer to transportation, easy access, you know, to groceries, or even getting a caregiver or a home health aide to come in to take care of you. But if you live too suburban, it's really hard for a caregiver to travel 2 hours just to get to your place and spend another 2 hours coming back to the city. So when we look at caregiving kind of in a holistic manner, somehow in San Francisco, a lot of the really affordable housing projects are built close to where services are.
Yeah. Another question from our audience is about Japan. It seems Japan is in the thick of challenges of an aging population. Any key lessons learned from Japan and Japanese culture?
I've been there watching their healthcare aging service industry. I think one thing very unique is they developed the hospital aging care facility and like a home care facility within the same building. That's very interesting. I copied that model to Suzhou because I think to Chinese and to probably the Asian population, when you do aging care, I mean senior care, the medical support is essential. You have to have these doctors on the way and to prepare the best quality for that at in the same time. And because you can make it in the same building, we can lower the cost, we can share most of the common places, and we can build up, as I mentioned, the integration model. So from Japan aging industry, I think this model is very advanced, and we can try make it happen in China.
Very interesting. I want to bring us back to something I had said at the beginning, which was some models by researchers at Harvard and other universities looked at seniors all the way through 2030 and 2050 in the United States. And they found that even if half of those seniors will not be able to afford these kinds of senior housing. They also found that if they liquidate their assets, still many will not be able to afford senior housing. So what are some ideas of making senior housing more affordable in the future?
So Carrie, just something my colleague has been we have been noticing. There are something like they call shared residential home. So you can remodel the existing residential homes to house seniors and welcome them living together. So that's something happening in US, certainly not in China yet. There's also like we call affinity focused lifestyle. So to convert some existing facilities, focus on attracting residents with common interest and same background. So that's similar to that concept, so-called shared residential homes. I think that's one area I see because you just cannot, only rely on those institutional senior living, which anyway, USA is in the highest percentage, is only like 12%. I guess by 2050, probably 20%, that's the most. So you still need a lot of community service center, as Annie might be has experienced. This new concept, shared residential service, all those things. I think that will develop in a big way.
Annie, have you heard of this model that is being facilitated by many social service agencies, which is shared housing?
Yes.
And are you working on that, and how is it working?
Yes. When the eviction started to come several years ago in San Francisco and Bay Area because of Alice Act, and there were so few housing that is available that an average income senior could afford. So we started to match seniors to really share, like they might have a 2-bedroom, so we try to match someone who's compatible. The process is slow because I think that in our culture, Chinese tend to be very cautious, and they ask a lot of questions, and they don't want to sign the contract, until they are sure that they could live together. But we have maybe 5 or 6 successful cases. But I think as social service agency, we have to stand by to give the support, because when you put 2 strangers together, there are bound to be conflicts, and we just have to have patience to work it out. But if senior, particularly retirees that have a large home, but all the children, grandchildren gone, their house is paid for, but they don't have a big income. And if they don't want to sell their property, finding a good tenant to co-share the space is actually a good idea. So we're gonna probably spend more efforts to do it, because there's hardly enough affordable housing units built in the city.
Yeah, I think that's so important. We have, that's a big problem with housing and housing density in Berkeley, California, where I live. There's one street in a nice neighborhood that has 9 houses on the street. All the houses are 4-bedroom houses.
Yeah.
And every single house has one older woman living there. But I do think you're right. There's going to need to be some agency like yours that helps people work out the contract and work out conflicts. So I'm glad to hear that you're working in that. Okay, so one final question. I'm a Chinese person. I'm coming to the US for graduate school, and I'm working in San Francisco right now. My parents are getting older, and I'm thinking about bringing them with me to the US, but they don't know English and US culture. What suggestions would you have for me?
Oh, it's happening now. In Bay Area, in Seattle, in Vancouver, you should go there, and you'll find those Asian focused, pretty nice. I have friends, they put in their parents there. I think there's a good opportunity in terms of business development. There's so many Chinese, because culture is different, food is different, lifestyle, still different, at least for the current generation. So that's good business opportunity, in my opinion.
So a business opportunity mean create some senior housing that's specifically focused toward different language groups or different immigrant groups?
Immigrant, yeah.
The question is, Carrie, that I would ask the person who asked the question is, do they intend to stay in the United States? Because if after graduate school, you go back to China, you don't want to just leave your parents here. But if you do intend to stay, then I would say come to San Francisco. Like your parents will feel very much at home, almost like China, because we have a very really a wonderful community that supports seniors that don't speak any English at all. So don't be worried.
To me, other than like a business, personally, I would suggest probably ask your parents more. Do they really want to move to a new, really new world? We can use the word. We've done some researches. Most of the aging population, they just want to stay where they are really they are very familiar with. That makes them feel better emotionally and physically, actually. So if they really want to try something new, then bring them to America. If not, maybe you can come back to China more often. That will be easier.
That's great. Okay, we just have a couple minutes left. So I want to thank all the panelists for being here. Does anyone have any final words of wisdom for us about senior care in US or China and things to be on the lookout for? Final words of wisdom.
Oh, it's all challenging. That's all I can say.
Yeah, survive. That's a word you should chasing in the healthcare industry for aging population.
Yes. And with the COVID pandemic in the US, I can speak for California. We began doing the master plan for aging, where the governor of our state wanted to have a transform aging services. We started this planning process when we had about a $17 billion surplus in our budget. Mm-hmm. We ended the process last week with a $54 billion deficit. Mm-hmm. So it really, COVID has really changed things. And, but I do think on a word of hope is that it has brought attention to some of the issues and challenges around aging. And I do think that we have a window of opportunity to make some changes. People care about older people. People have seen what the pandemic has done. And so I think as much as we can act in this window of opportunity, we should do so. So yes. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you,
everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
What a thought-provoking discussion. The challenges facing the senior care in both countries are concerning, but technology innovation and also sharing the experience and practices may give us hope. So thank you for the panel's phenomenal presentation. Just a reminder for all the audience, there is a networking session starting shortly after this. So please follow the handbook's instructions to sign up and join the section. Thank you. Coming up next is the Enterprise Services panel to be moderated by Lee Song, Managing Director, Silicon Valley Bank Asia Link. The panelists will discuss what the technology can do to innovate and better serve the work from anywhere trend during and post the pandemic. Please submit your questions in either Baidu or YouTube live stream chat box. So welcome the panel.
Well, thank you, Coco. One evening about 2 months ago, when I was just about to sit down for dinner, an email alert showed up on my phone. After quickly reading through it, I was like this. You probably wonder, what's in that email? Well, my friend Anne at Berkeley just asked me if I'd be okay to moderate this panel. Okay, it's more than okay. I love volunteering in any occasion for my beloved Berkeley. So hello everyone, my name is Li Song. I'm a managing director at SVB's Asia Link practice, where I have been a technology banker for 20 years. I'm so thrilled that you can join us today, and welcome. So in today's session, we're going to spend probably 25 minutes or so in a moderated discussion where our speakers will tell their take on how the pandemic and the remote work trend impact the enterprise service sector, future tech trends, and also the US-China business model. And then we'll have a 20 minutes or so Q&A answering the questions submitted by the audience. Toward the end, I'm going to share with you a personal story of my life and how my family's diet has been impacted by the pandemic. So stick around till the end, it'll be fun. Let's introduce our speakers today. Dialing in from Beijing, we have Lu Guo. Lu is a VC in the SIG Asia in China. And from Shanghai, we have Junyuan Qi. Junyuan is the founder of Team Vision, a company he founded while still in college. Here in the Bay Area, we have Xintong Zhang. Xintong is a product director at Salesforce. And also from the Bay Area, we have Professor Henry Chesbrough from Berkeley. So Lu, Junyuan, Xintong, and Professor, welcome. Lu, let me start with you. As a VC and tech investor, what do you think the tech sector can respond and better serve the work from anywhere reality nowadays?
Okay, thanks for the question. It's good. It's an honor to be here. First, I want to say the COVID-19 things, it does put on lots of damage and a negative impact on our business. I really wish everybody stay safe and our business stay sound. But at the same time, we do see this COVID-19 being a catalyst. The so-called work from anywhere or engagement from anywhere has been one of the major themes we have been working on. I tend to think about this in two angles. The first angle is how do I interact? How do I work with my internal team? So even before the COVID-19, there were a bunch of the gadgets and tools, right? You can easily pull out a couple of apps on your mobile phone, which supports free video conferencing. But now we realize what we need is we need an enterprise grade service, which is highly reliable, which can consolidate my data from different angles, which can support tens or even hundreds of people talking at the same time. So moving from gadgets into an enterprise service grade collaboration tools, that's something highly demanded in the market. And that's something we have been working on as well. Another angle we think about this is we also have to engage with the external people, like our customers, our suppliers, people we potentially want to recruit. What it takes there is more than just technology and the products. It also takes some cultural shift. It takes our change on the mentality. I have to learn how to engage my external partners, how to build up the chemistry, how to build up the rapport, and also precisely identify the pitfalls, the issues through video conferencing, through internet interactions, instead of the in-person meeting. Well, it's been a few months. I think so far the progress has been pretty good. We did notice that this kind of culture shift has been happening a lot. It's been changing lots of the day-to-day business behavior.
Well, the human element part of the changes you brought up is a key thing. We're going to come back and revisit that, Lu. So let me ask you, as a tech founder, what do you think the entrepreneurs and founders can do to seize this work from anywhere opportunity nowadays?
Thanks. I hope everyone is still doing great. In this question, first to bring up, I firmly believe in the future of work from anywhere, as now we are spending too much time and too many resources on transportation. The question should be how to accelerate this convention. To make such mass convention, need we put thoughts into things that are happening every day in people's daily work instead of like bring up cool products for geeks. For example, we are now easily holding this kind of conversation-based meeting online, but we cannot hold a workshop online because we cannot very easily draw on the same whiteboard together, and how to make things like this happen matters. And in conclusion, I think we are in the path to create a digital world for everyone. So the most important thing is we make this new world people can find familiar, and but everything is like better in an intuitive way. Thanks.
That's certainly a good angle. When we bring a lot of people online, that puts so much strain on the supporting software part. So let's ask someone from the software company, Xintong. And certainly you're with Salesforce, and then as you know, the SaaS sector is certainly kind of a hot field now, certainly impacted by the pandemic in a big way. Can you tell us how the pandemic has impacted the SaaS sector so far?
Absolutely, great question. Hello, everyone. I'm Xing Tong, Director of Product Management from Salesforce. It's really my pleasure to be here, share my personal thoughts and opinion with you. Just one quick disclaimer that I don't represent Salesforce. And back to our question in terms of the impact COVID-19 has on the SaaS industry. I guess everyone, just by browsing your browsing news lately, you might have been seeing the booming of SaaS from cases like Snowflake IPO, Zoom IPO early of the year, and the surge of Salesforce revenue throughout Q2. So it seems that the SaaS industry are all booming and happy. And today I just want to share with you that not all the SaaS businesses are affected equally. Yes, there are happy cases, but also there are challenges that we see from this pandemic. For example, many companies out there are cutting their IT budget. Gartner, in fact, predicts that there is a 5% contraction of worldwide IT spending. So that basically means that the spending on the software are less than before. The key factor to determine whether a SaaS business is growing or is affected negatively is really how mission critical the problem that SaaS company is trying to solve is. We can put ourselves in a situation that of a CIO of a company or of a customer. What they're doing right now is they're really scrutinizing all the SaaS or software offerings that they have and try to reduce costs by just terminate the contract for non-essential softwares. So the first point that I want you to take away with is build truly mission critical product that will give you the resilience of your company. And secondly, going back, I just want to echo what Junyuan said earlier regarding the fact that COVID-19 is truly an opportunity for the SaaS industry. And we've all seen that human-to-human interactions has been blocked or coming with inconvenience. So all of these interactions that are currently not being digitalized are the opportunity for this industry.
Well, you brought up a certainly key point, meaning COVID-19 is an opportunity. I want to say, anytime we have a kind of a natural thing where huge pandemic like this, it creates winners and losers. We're going to come back to you, ask you to predict the future a little bit in a later question session. Just stay there on that thought, Xintong. And you also mentioned the kind of global perspective. I want to bring in our Professor Chesbro. Professor, as a Berkeley professor, well-known scholar around the world, you guys primarily work with ideas, big ideas. And the biggest, well, I think one of the biggest idea of our lifetime is probably the US-China relation. So based on your observation, how do you compare the US business model to those of the Chinese?
Well, Lee, thank you very much for including me. I want to give a shout out to my former student, Beishuan, who is with us today in Shanghai. And she suffered through my class last spring before the pandemic. And indeed, I think she was the one who initially invited me to be with you. To speak to your question directly, many companies in the US have gone through a period where they were really excited about China. It was the next big growth market. It was a huge, big opportunity. And many, not all, but many were then disappointed with their business performance in China. Not all. Apple has done well. Tesla looks like it's doing great. Now that Xintong is doing it, I know Salesforce is going to be awesome as well. But many companies were very disappointed. And I think there's a lesson for us in their disappointment, because I think one of the root causes is not that China didn't become a very large, rapidly growing market. It did. But the US companies trying to penetrate it were taking with them the business models they brought from the US. And what is needed in China, it's a very competitive market as well as a very, very big market, and things happen fast. And so many American companies, in my judgment, made the error of not delegating enough authority to the local China managers to adapt the products, fix the problems, change even the pricing and the business models and even the branding, if need be successful in that market. And so I think that's one of the big problems that American companies have had. It's not been the technologies, it's been their inability to adapt to the business models. And when you trace that back, it's due to an inability or an unwillingness to delegate enough authority and trust the leaders you have in China to do the right thing for your company.
Well, thank you, Professor. You cannot believe how many additional questions I thought of just based on what you told us just now. So stick around, there'll be more questions coming your way momentarily.
Well, and Lee, I have one example that might even interest you in Silicon Valley Bank. So when we come back, we'll talk about it.
Oh, let's do that. I appreciate that, yeah. So before I ask the next round of questions, I want to just shout out to the audience. Feel free to send in your questions in the chat box. And then we're going to gather that and then ask the audience, ask the speakers on that. So feel free to send in the questions. So the next question is coming back to Xintong. You're a veteran software kind of professional. You've been in the field for a long time and you work for a large company. You must have seen kind of big impact caused by kind of big changes like this pandemic. What lessons have we learned in the past, sudden changes like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we handle changes, maybe I'll take a step back. Let's use an analogy of ourselves. Back in March, when the shield in place or the lockdown was happening in Bay Area, everyone were told to work from home. So my first intuition was, okay, this is probably going to be a few weeks working from home. I can power through it by squatting in my dining table. So I have a temporary solution for working from home, which is squatting at the dining table. And soon I realized that this is becoming a long-term lifestyle change. So I cannot survive just by a dining table. So what happened is I started buying office equipment, gym equipment at home, and also I start planning out on strategies around how to manage my time so that I can both effectively work at home and take care of myself. That same transformation is also happening to the businesses. So there are two categories of businesses these days. Some of them are treating this, they're reacting to the change as if it's temporary, so that they would put in band-aids or stop the bleeding with hope that someday their business will get back to normal. And the second category of businesses are that they know that there is no going back to normal. We are living in the future. The future looks a lot like where we are today. So what they do is they are really starting their planning for the long term. How do they deal with this change as a strategic change? So that to them, digitization is not a short-term fix for this problem. It's really where they want to go in long term. And my observation has been these companies that are treating this change as a long-term strategy change are doing better.
Well, that's very helpful. I particularly like your home gym expansion example because that relates to many people. That's exactly what I did for my home. We're done with this session. I'd love to compare our pictures of your gym and my home gym after this. And so back to Junyuan, Xintong mentioned about changes in the past. As someone who founded company, keep a very close eye of future trend, what do you think are the changes in the next 5-10 year period of time?
Thank you for the question. I think the most important change in the workplaces will be the change of people. We will have a younger generation, what I call app generation. They grown up with mobile apps for like order takeaways, etc. Their intention of solving a problem is to find whether there's an app and digital tool for that. So I think the most important change here in workplace is that we will see more softwares with consumer experiences. Like, for example, they will expect software to be mobile first. And I think they want to log something into your CRM instead of going back to their desktop. And they will expect softwares that are friendly for them to use individually or among small groups. Because waiting for someone to set up the system or approve access to an application will lose their patience. And also, I think they will expect videos as the main form of information. You can't expect them to read menus for anything, but I think instead they should be video tutorials. So things like this will happen a lot. Thanks.
Oh, I think that the video part of it is spot on. And nowadays, a lot of, like you said, a lot of the menus are actually just videos. You can email all that to your client, and then it's so visual, so effective. So kudos to you for pointing that out. And so back to Professor Chesbro. You and I certainly are people who have been watching China for a long, long time, and then we have our views and consensus. You and I kind of agree that sometimes US companies, when they go to China, they couldn't compete with China. And I mean, why? What do you think? Can we drill down to that subject a little bit more?
Absolutely. And here's where I can bring in some information from the financial services sector that might even be relevant to Silicon Valley Bank. Many of the people in this group are going to be familiar with Ant Financial, although many people in the United States don't actually know much about them. But they're a very important company, and I think we're all going to know a lot more about them in the future. But one of the things that they did that I think is a nice illustration of why it's been hard for the US companies, and indeed why it might be hard for Silicon Valley Bank, at least in certain areas. So many people know that in the last 12 months, there's been a real problem with pork production in China. They had this terrible virus that really killed off a lot of the pigs on the farms in China, especially small and medium-sized farmers were really, really heavily hit. And so Ant Financial thought we really could offer a product, essentially crop insurance for pigs, for the farmers. So we could insure farmers against the risk of loss of their herd of pigs. But of course, how do you actually execute such an offer? And this is where Ant, I think, drew on other parts of Alibaba, because with visual recognition and artificial intelligence, they literally created a way that you could the farmer could take a picture of each pig. And with the facial recognition software, you could literally set up an inventory of the herd of pigs for that farmer on that farm. And then you can insure them. So if a pig dies, the farmer can't just say it was another pig. It's got to be the one that matches the records that they have. So it was an enabling technology in a very high-tech way that allowed farms to be protected in financial services from something that's been a serious problem for the last 12 months. But if you're Silicon Valley Bank, how on earth do you compete with that? You don't have the access to the farms. You may not have access to the visual recognition and artificial intelligence technologies and all the rest. The money is the least of it. It's all these other pieces that are being put together in a very creative way to solve what has been a really big problem in Chinese agriculture over the last year. He is speechless. Let the record show he is speechless.
That is a fantastic example you brought up. This is the first time I've heard of facial recognition technology that's being used on pigs.
Same here. I was not aware of it either.
I'm completely speechless. But back to your kind of soft question. At Silicon Valley Bank, we certainly don't finance any pig-related stuff. We do.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet, yeah. But what we excel is the technology that behind that technology, the facial recognition, the software, the hardware, all those things. That's one of the key areas we finance. And certainly our life science sector we practice is world-class as well. For example, our clients are just working on Alzheimer's disease cure, addiction cure, all those things. One of the kind of COVID vaccine developers is also our client. So that's where we excel. We want to leverage in these technology field. But that pig's facial recognition example is just a world-class, it's a killer one. Kudos to you, Professor.
Well, and I have one that's a positive story for Silicon Valley Bank. As you were saying, Silicon Valley Bank has deep connections in the tech sector and has had them for a long time now. They realized that this was worth banking long before commercial banks were willing to do so. And it really got them in a preferred position with many of the technology leaders. And through the relationships that were developed, it actually got Silicon Valley Bank into Napa and Sonoma County wine production. Not because they knew a lot about wine, but because the founders of these companies, when they retired, they went to open up wineries and they already had these strong relations with Silicon Valley Bank. And Silicon Valley Bank said, you know what, we believe in you, we're going to go with you. And so it did get Silicon Valley Bank into that part of agriculture.
Well, thank you for that nice plug from my employer. I'll definitely send you a bottle of wine after this session.
Well, we both know Gerard Brady, and he told me a lot about this and even took me on a tour of some of the investments that Silicon Valley Bank had up in Sonoma and Napa. So I have firsthand knowledge of some of this.
I appreciate that.
But I'm always willing to do more research.
Yeah, will do. I'm going to bring the conversation back to Berkeley China Summit. So back to Lou. Hey, Lou, I want to ask you, in addition to Ant Financial, Silicon Valley Bank, the PIC, facial recognition, all that, the other two sectors our audience sent a lot of interest in are the B2B and then the SaaS sector. They wanted to know, based on your observation, what are the similarities and differences between these two sectors between the US and China? What's your take on that?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Well, apparently the software business, SaaS, IT, everything, it started accelerating the development in the past 5 years. This is one of the major markets my fund made investment in, and I happen to be leading this practice. So for that, I get a chance to talk to lots of entrepreneurs and experts in this domain. I think as a general rule, most people would agree that US is leading China on this phase, maybe for 5, 10, or even longer period of time. But we believe China is trying to catch up very quickly. China will be there. What US experienced, what it took US 10, 15 years to develop, it might take a slightly shorter time to get there in China. So we often run into questions. Well, we tend to take the successful case in US as a benchmark for the future success case in China. As we mentioned, Snowflake is filing IPO, which is a very good company. So people here started talking about, hey, where is the Snowflake in China for the next few years? So that kind of copying the new idea, copying the proven technology to China has been one of the major thinking framework people have been taking on. Well, if you have been in the technology long enough, you would know that this phenomena is nothing new. 10, 15 years ago, people were trying to copy the successful internet consumer internet, consumer mobile internet apps to China. And then very quickly, China got enough innovation power, and you see China and the US are like running on par and sometimes leading the innovation on the consumer internet into two different paths. I do believe that kind of trend will happen in the software business, in the B2B business as well. We are going to see this trend even more significant in the next 5, 10 years.
That's great. I mean, along that subject, I wanted to bring in Xintong. So Xintong, what do you think this whole remote work, kind of a new normal, what's their impact on the businesses and also on the professionals?
Yeah, for sure. I think we talked about the impact on businesses earlier in terms of the things are rapidly changing. So the businesses should really be leaning into these changes, acknowledge the changes, and adapt to it. So if there is like one advice that I could give to a business, although I have never found my business, so this could totally be my personal opinion, is stay agile. Just like development, we plan out for the very near future and rapidly adapt our plan based on the market, based on the customer needs. So that's also that also applied to businesses, just given how rapid things has been changing for this year. And in terms of the professionals, I do have one quick note or advice, which is stay proactive. I know it applies to any scenario to anybody, but really in this working from home mode, it's more relevant because many hallway conversations, bumping into people or ad hoc learning things are no longer happening. You cannot run into someone in the elevator and learn something that is not immediately in your area. So proactively reaching out to people, learn things outside of your own area is going to be important for the growth for any individuals.
Well, that's a great point. It's certainly very humble of you to say that you've never founded a business, et cetera, but you work at a large company, and that speaks of your credentials and credibility a lot. But we do have a person who founded a company at a very young age. So Junyuan, let me ask you, what do you think the new way of work and collaboration mean to founders and entrepreneurs like you going forward?
Thanks for the question. I think the most important thing to recognize is there's a trend of like a lot of new people coming from the consumer areas. They usually like worked in social platforms. They used to work in e-commerce platforms. They are coming into this area of like collaboration or like business and the productivity area. And they have very good understanding of how to satisfy end users. And they have very natural understanding of the network effects of growth. And things like this will help them to bring out solutions that we usually couldn't work out. And so learn these things and be partners with these guys. And I think this will be the huge change and what we can embrace in the years to come. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. And one kind of final question from me to Lou is that if you can quickly answer the same question, what do the kind of the changes in work and collaboration mean for the investors like you guys?
Okay. So I think there's lots of points I can talk about, but maybe I'll just pick one. As I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 does put on lots of culture shift. One major impact we are going to see is the sales efficiency, sales processes is going to be changed a lot. And I think the meaningfulness behind this is not only saving some sales costs, but it really makes some of these SaaS-based, especially the medium, small business-oriented SaaS business, profitable at the unit economy level. So there are certain sides of the sales which is very hard to handle. It does require the on-site meeting, in-person deployment, etc. But the check size is not big enough to cover the cost. This is one of the major reasons why the SME-based SaaS business had lots of hard time in the past 10 years. But this COVID-19 is changing that kind of dynamics. It's changing the sales efficiency. That means this could be a very strong driver for that category of the SaaS business, which struggled in the past 10 years, but really take off in the next decade.
That's great. We kind of concluded our moderated session and we covered a lot of ground. So in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to answer questions submitted by the audience. There's tons of questions coming in. So one quick note to the audience. You guys are doing great. There's tons of questions, so stick around, don't click away because your questions might be answered. The first question is, I'll throw it out, anyone can answer. What are the new tools and processes that companies need to succeed in the post-pandemic world? Who wants to take that?
Let me have this question.
Yeah.
I think what companies should do is to take tools that can accelerate the transition of information. This is losing of context in the digital world is what we are experiencing. We have like too many chats and too many conversations in emails, and we are losing the real context. So if we can adopt tools that help our employees, help our partners to really understand where the goal is and to set up a navigation system for the company's information systems, I think that's the most important things.
That's helpful. So the second question is for our professor. Professor, you brought up facial recognition and AI. These frontier tech are being treated differently by the Chinese and US government due to privacy and ethics concerns. What are your thoughts on regulation on technology development?
It's a very important question and one that's even in real time. We're hearing Washington, D.C. Banning TikTok and WeChat. And I think the ostensible reasons are these issues. So this is a real-time question. I would also bring in a third party into the discussion. There's China, there's US, and I would also bring in the EU. And the reason I would bring in the EU is that although they don't have companies that are as strong as either China or the US, their market is actually the largest of the three. And if you think back to privacy and the GDPR that was implemented a couple of years ago now, that originated in Europe. And then companies in the US and China said, it's actually more efficient just to adopt that process and agree to it. And then we can have a global standard for privacy rather than having to implement different versions for different markets. I think that might be a model for where we're going. that China and the US are in opposition to each other because of different values, different properties of data, different capabilities of government to regulate and so on. But there's also a third party, Europe, that cares very much about this. And because they don't have a strong technology player in the fight, they're going to be thinking more about the needs of their consumers because they don't have a strong producer to protect. And so it could be the case that Europe could deliver the solution for both China and the US for the same kinds of reasons. It's better and more efficient to sell to everybody than to have to create different versions for different regions.
I mean, let me just follow up on that. Europe is a heavily regulated region to do business. I mean, wouldn't their regulation just put more burden on business or on new technology over there?
Well, there's no question that if you look at the software industry in China and you look at it in the US and you look at it in Europe, China and the US are both incredibly dynamic, and Europe is much less so. And so it has some of those negative effects that you mentioned, but there's a positive effect that comes from this as well, which is they aren't there to advocate for a really large domestic company, the way the US might defend Microsoft or might defend Facebook or Google, or the Chinese might defend Alibaba or Tencent. Europe doesn't have anybody like that to defend. So how are they going to make their policy? They're going to try to think about what's in the best interest of their consumers. And that's, I think, what happened in the privacy domain, where Europe really, in the regulation area, they really did take the lead on privacy.
That makes sense. So the next question is for Xintong. Xintong, you brought up reaching out to people. The world won't be the same post-pandemic. How will company and professionals connect to opportunities differently in the work from anywhere world?
That's a great question. I think so. That is still to be developed. There are a lot of opportunities that we see in this space, such as before the businesses can reach out to consumers or to their team by running virtual events and actually running physical events in Moscone Center in San Francisco or in some stadium in somewhere in the world. And those kind of human-to-human interactions no longer exist. So there are definitely gaps to be filled in terms of how the businesses reach out to people. And as a professional that are looking for career growth, I think the only thing that we could do as the technology are developing to fill in this gap is to really initiate the conversations with people that either you know or you don't know, and start navigating around the organization, either within the organization or outside of the organization.
Good point, yeah. So the next question is, do you think COVID will accelerate trends like nationalism and reshoring of trade? As COVID exposed risk of extended supply chain, companies are shifting toward resilience and domestic circulation. Who wants to take that? Oh, Professor, please.
So I'll at least start this conversation. I do think that COVID did expose supply chains that were dependent entirely on a single country. And so when there were interruptions, it limited their ability to adapt quickly. Xintong was talking about agility a few moments ago and the importance of that. So one can think of this as exposing the reality that if you optimize and make it very efficient and scale it massively, you do lose some agility. And so we don't have to retreat to an isolationist world. I like very much your term resilient, and I would maybe have a little spice of agility thrown in there so that as things shift and change in ways that are not always able to be foreseen, organizations are then more agile and more resilient, and they haven't completely withdrawn inside their own walls, but neither are they overcommitted and overextended to a single source, a single supplier who would may be really large and massive and efficient, but may not be very flexible or adaptive.
That's a good point. The next question is for Lou. So Lou, can you name one hot sector in China and one not so hot sector in China?
Oh, okay. I think the first part is much easier than the second part. I can easily give a couple. Well, given this COVID-19, we all know everything is moving faster towards cloud. Digitization has been an even accelerated trend. Along this trend, security and compliance is becoming a higher demand because there are more data, more interaction on the internet. We need a better compliance structure in shape and a better security infrastructure there. So we do see most of the companies in this domain actually benefited from this pandemic. What's not so hot here, I want to say lots of the traditional business, which involves lots of the labor work, in-person interaction, got hit very heavily, especially if those businesses were running on a thin margin. I'll give you one example, logistics service. Well, we were just talking about supply chain, right? We do manage a few portfolio companies which works on this supply chain technology. We noticed that this traditional logistics service companies, they were running on the thin margin. They were hit like really heavily during the pandemic. In the first 3 months of this year. Another example I can give you, I just went to this industrial expo in Shanghai a few days ago. The key difference we noticed that the expo this year, the difference between this year and last year, there are just so much less smaller company in the expo this year because they didn't have enough buffer on the cash balance. They couldn't manage the payment terms well, and they were just of the business. I think those, if you didn't take on the digitization enough, if you were not able to managing your financial in an efficient way, then it's a very not hot business in the market.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, here in the Bay Area, one sector I can tell you suffer a lot is the bike sharing business or the scooter sharing business. Yeah. They almost just disappeared since the COVID pandemic hit. I don't know about the situation in China, but I would imagine that's probably the same thing. How can you share those things when there's germs or virus on them? So, I mean, yeah. Another thing I would say.
That's true. I think an easier example, which I didn't raise, but I think everybody would agree that travel, especially leisure travel industry, that was a major hit. I don't think it's coming back yet. And movie, you know, there are just so many fewer people going to theater now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the next question is, it's an open question to everyone, I guess. How will the pandemic change where companies choose to hire and where people choose to live? Who wants to take that?
I can take the second half of it. Basically, how does it change where people choose to live? I think living in Bay Area, where it is one of the most expensive, it has one of the most expensive housing within the United States. I have many friends that are looking to move somewhere else. I think there are some surveys recently, but I don't remember the number. There are many people already moving out to Texas, to other areas inside of the United States, and even outside of the country. So that is happening. But there are, the trickiness is the salary adjustment because of the movement, and also the regulations around where are you allowed to work from for this company. So yeah, I think the motivation is there. And if we give it some time, this might happen.
Well, that's a great point. I think from my perspective, where the company choose to hire, I can probably add on to that. In my opinion, I think this work from home new normal will significantly expand where company can hire. They don't have to hire people within their local geographic area. They can hire people from other area because it's all work from home nowadays. So that's, I think, a great opportunity for company, for people. You will see a lot of people movement nowadays, which is true, like you said earlier. Yeah.
I guess I can make a couple of further comments regarding that point. I think the idea of employment will go through some further change, some deeper change, especially in China in the next 5-10 years. More and more people will be moving from the traditional tight employment relationship into something more like a freelancer in the past, which means they belong to their contribution is more like a project-based instead of being a long-term employment. But there will be a profound difference between the newer model of the freelancer versus the older model of the freelancer. In the past, a freelancer can only take on projects which are clearly defined, the boundary is clearly defined, which can be more handled in a more independently way. But now we are seeing this collaboration technology, driving forward very fast. We are gonna see more and more people in a freelancer mode can contribute in those highly collaborative projects, which functions more like a typical employee, but their relationship to this employer is more project-based other than a long-term relationship.
That's a great point. You brought up the freelancers. I want to just add one point to that, because here in California, the state regulation is playing a big impact on the freelance business, because there's a big battle going on between Uber and Lyft and the state. There's laws kind of impacting that. It's a big issue here in California. So kudos for bringing that up. Another question from the audience is this: quickly, can you name one sector, either B2B or B2C, that's supposed to accelerate due to COVID, but actually did not? Quickly, just who can take that? And just one sector, that's it. Well, if there's no answer to that question, that's the question of the day. It got all four of our speakers here. So, Professor, any answer to that? Do you know? If no, we'll move on to the next one.
I don't have something good to offer there. I can observe that in past pandemics, we go through an overshoot where we ramp up production of ventilators, we ramp up production of vaccines, et cetera, and we don't have enough, we have to go harder, and then at some point we saturate. And then sadly, a year later, these things are unutilized and there's usually a big write-off. So it's not happening now, and I wouldn't want any of the vaccine companies to slow down at all, but I think we can expect that there will be an overshoot.
That's a good point. So the last question in the Q&A session is from me to all the speakers. So just feel free to answer in short one-sentence answers. Let's say this year's Berkeley China Summit is such a success, and then we miraculously got rid of the pandemic. So tomorrow, the world is back to normal, what will be the first thing you plan to do if that happened? Xintong, start from you.
I will eat a Hong Kong style fish at the restaurant.
Very good. What about you, Jinyuan?
I'm looking forward to surf in Hawaii.
Very good. What about you, Lou?
Well, I don't think my day-to-day routine and my day-to-day life has been changed that much. Likely, it's not going to be lots of change to me either once the pandemic ends.
Professor, what about you?
I will be going to Rome, Italy.
Oh, no.
I have an appointment there at a university in Rome called Lewis, and I was expecting to get there a couple of times in 2020, and I haven't been able to, so I'm eager to get back.
That is fantastic. My thing to do is I can't wait to send my son back to school when that happens.
For that part, I already did.
Okay, good. So I cannot wait. But joking aside, and all I can say, what a fantastic and informative session we have there. Hats off to the speakers and also hats off to the audience. The questions you sent in are just spot on. You guys are doing great, awesome. Before I return the mic back to our MC, let me share with you a personal story of my family. When the whole stay-at-home order started back in March here in the Bay Area, my family of 3 decided that because we're not going to go out and do a lot of exercise, we need to eat very healthy every day. As it turned out, within a week, we basically gave up all other healthy diet and focused exclusively on seafood diet. What do I mean by that? When we walk around the house, whatever food we see, we eat them. So with that bad joke, I'm gonna give the mic back to the MC, Coco. Coco. Coco, the mic is back to you.
Coco is trying to connecting digitally to the computer. That's how important digital is.
Okay.
Well, I guess the COVID-19 showed us that even though we have invested billions and trillions of dollars in the digital infrastructure, it's still not enough.
Yeah, totally. Coco, can you hear us? We're all good. Back to you now.
So thank you all for the wonderful presentation.
Can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Great. So thank you all for the wonderful presentation. I'm also very curious about the facial recognition technology for the pigs as well. We'll find out. So next is the networking session with this panel. For all the audience interested in further conversation with this panel, please sign up and join the networking session. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we are approaching the end of today's program. I want to invite the summit's undergrad student co-president, Rachel Chen, to make the closing remarks, to be followed by welcome remarks video from Executive Director of Cal Alumni Association, Ms. Chloe Hewlett, Dean Ann Harrison of Berkeley Haas School of Business, and Dean Sujie Liu, Dean of Berkeley's College of Engineering. Rachel, please.
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Coco, and thanks everyone for making time to attend our summit today. I'm Rachel, this year's co-president of Berkeley China Summit Organizing Committee, and I'm a fourth-year undergrad student at Berkeley. And this is also my first year working at BCS. BCS has basically given me the chance to meet many industry experts and well-known professors, and also develop my video editing and photo shooting skills while working in the video production department. Also, in the same time, gain leadership skills as a co-president, and last but not least, meets lots of fun, interesting, amazing people during my process at BCS. In other words, I would say the Berkeley China Summit community has helped me enrich my university experiences. So if you're a student at Berkeley right now, and if you are willing to learn from and contribute to a community, we'd love for you to join us at BCS. Finally, I want to thank you all again for making time to be here today. Don't forget to attend the second half of our summit tomorrow. There will be 2 more keynote speeches and also 2 more panels. So I hope all of you can stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
On behalf of the Cal Alumni Association, greetings to all of the Berkeley China Summit attendees. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this special event. I have participated for many years in the summit, but this will be my first time virtually with our fellow alumni, both internationally in China and here in the United States. As Executive Director of the Cal Alumni Association, I continue to be impressed by the career journeys and accomplishments of our distinguished alumni community. This is reflected in the Berkeley China Summit program of speakers and attendees. I'm especially pleased that you will hear from UC Berkeley's first Chief Innovation Officer and leader of the Berkeley Changemaker Initiative, Rich Lyons. Special thanks to the leadership of the Chinese chapter and the Berkeley Chinese Alumni International Association. I'd like to acknowledge you for your unique contributions to alumni and student engagement on campus and around the world. Welcome to the 2020 Berkeley China Summit. Go Bears.
Hello. While I cannot be with you for the Berkeley China Summit, I did want to wish you great success and congratulate all of those involved for a fantastic event on September 18th and 19th. Thank you also for hosting me during a fireside chat that I held with you on August 12th. The theme of this year's conference, Redefine and Reconnect, Technology Empowering the World, is particularly relevant as we consider the global landscape post-pandemic and look at the strategies utilized during this time. Berkeley's relationship with Asia is almost as long as its existence, and we are proud to have prominent connections and a vast alumni network. My own research has intentionally and long focused on China and aligns with my background of work with the World Bank, as well as my research in development economics. Through my friend and great mentor, Lin Yifu, I also serve on his advisory board at Beijing University's Institute of New Structural Economics. Universities have always thrived on collaboration across borders and continents because their missions speak to something higher than economic success at the country level or nationalism. We exist to create new knowledge and to develop the talent that will solve the big problems of the future. That's why I think this approach, the approach of cooperation across borders, will always win in the long run. I want to congratulate all the organizers, the alumni and students, and thank the participating speakers and sponsors. Best wishes to all of you.
Greetings from the College of Engineering at UC Berkeley. It is my honor and pleasure to help welcome you all to the Berkeley China Summit 2020. We all know that advances in technology today will help shape our world tomorrow. The speakers here today are visionary leaders who will share their stories and insights for success, including in international collaboration. I hope that this conference will serve to strengthen and build new connections to support your individual success and our collective success to ensure a brighter future for all members of our globally interconnected society. Congratulations to the BCS organizers and best wishes for a successful conference.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you all for coming today. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow again. Thank you all.